Welcome to Fans Fight Back with myself, Martin Theobald, on the Pitch Boxing app. And this week we're flying solo to go and take a whistle-stop tour around the world of boxing with plenty going on, yet seemingly not too much going on. Let's start off on Sky Sports this Saturday night, up in Liverpool, headlined by Liam Smith versus Mwakinyo. We'll come on to that. Let's start with the undercard. Azeez versus Shakan Pittas. I love this fight. Azeez has been built properly. That's the only way I can put it, properly. He's been brought up on the old MTK YouTube shows, fighting opponents that we weren't necessarily aware of, brought up. He's got that kind of Tyson-esque look about him where everything looks very basic, from how he walks to the ring through to what he does. He's very destructive. I like Azeez. I like the fact that he's fighting Shakan Pittas. Shakan Pittas kind of rose to fame on Channel 5. He won the British title and then went and lost it to Craig Richards on Channel 5. So it's nice to see that he's still in that mix in the British light heavyweight title scene. It's a good fight. I think Azeez wins it. I think Azeez will stop him. But I like the fact that you get the ex-British champions before they're too washed up to fight the current British champions. Why not? I mean, there's that bustling light heavyweight scene. We're seeing Joshua Buatsi going in against Jean Pascal soon. Maybe. We'll see. Purse bids on that happened this week. It's ended up with Lou DiBella Promotions. It's ended up happening on BT Sport. So we'll see whether that does happen. But that bustling light heavyweight scene in Britain, the likes of Callum Smith, the likes of Azeez, the likes of Anthony Yard, the likes of Joshua Buatsi. It's exciting. Callum Johnson. To see them all fight one another. If Azeez comes through this, I'd like to see him step up into that mix. Further to that, we've then got Natasha Jonas against Patricia Bergult. Undefeated Patricia Bergult. Probably best known over here for a win against Hannah Marshall. It's a unification fight for Natasha Jonas. It's what she's been calling for. I like it. I love Jonas as a person. I think she's great. I think she carries herself brilliantly. It's not necessarily the fight we wanted to see, though. I think Jonas versus Hannah Marshall would have gained better traction over here. Marshall is going to go and fight Terry Harper. Terry Harper's stepping up 2 weight divisions. There's big question marks about how effective she'll be up there, especially when she's struggled with some of the punch power down at her natural weights. I'd have liked to have seen Natasha Jonas versus Marshall, but we'll take Bergult. You know, I can't profess to know too much about her, but it's a unification fight on an undercard. It's in Natasha Jonas's hometown of Liverpool. Yeah, I'm good with it. Following that, you'd love to see then the winner of this fight, hopefully Natasha, versus the winner of Hannah Marshall versus Terry Harper. We'll move on to the main event, Liam Smith versus Mwakinyo. I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with it at all. Liam Smith is 34 years old. Liam Smith is familiar to Sky Sports viewers from his time at Matchroom, where he's been on Sky Sports shows already. Liam Smith should be familiar to boxing fans already that are tuning on a Saturday night. He doesn't need an introduction fight. He doesn't need Mwakinyo. Mwakinyo was known for coming over and stopping Sam Eggington. It was a huge upset when he did it, and then he's been back fighting in Africa against people we don't know. He's been off radar. This is just an introduction fight for Liam Smith. As if the fight goes ahead even. We're hearing stories, it's being recorded Wednesday night. We're hearing stories that Mwakinyo may not even be there come Saturday. So that becomes a stand-in opponent. I don't need to see this from Liam Smith. We know what he's about. This doesn't prove anything. I'd rather see him against somebody else. Moving on. Over stateside this weekend, Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. I like it as a fight. I don't necessarily think it's a pay-per-view fight, which it is over in the US and in the UK. Similarly, it's available on Fight TV. You wouldn't catch me paying for it, but I love it as a fight. Luis Ortiz is hard to benchmark. His career, you know, I would struggle to pick out who his best career win is against for Luis Ortiz. For Andy Ruiz, it's an easy one. It was Anthony Joshua. But he failed to capitalise on that. He failed to follow it up. He failed to turn up in shape for the second fight. But look, two good heavyweights. Ortiz's reputation maybe goes ahead of his CV. But let's see what they can do. Let's see. You know, it's a fun fight. Luis Ortiz looked in trouble against Charles Martin. If Andy Ruiz gets in shape, if Andy Ruiz turns up, he ought to make easy work, in my view, of Luis Ortiz. But we'll see come Saturday night over in America. On the heavyweight scene, it's announced this week that Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker will be for a WBO interim title. Why? Why? Someone from the WBO justify that. That title was fought for 10 days, 11 days ago. It's held by Alexander Usyk. There's talks of him potentially fighting Tyson Fury for unification, for undisputed. Why do we need an interim title? Outside of the WBO making money, it makes absolutely no sense. There's no injuries we've heard of. There's no delays we've heard of. Why do we get an interim title fight? Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker as a standalone fight, I'm perfectly fine with. Why does it need a WBO interim title? I don't get it. But that fight will be happening on the same night as Lee Wood will be taking on Mauricio Lara, the guy that beat Josh Warrington. That's a hell of a fight. I love that fight. It's great fun. Lee Wood has proved his worth recently. You know, up in Nottingham, he stopped Michael Conlan with that incredible stoppage in the last round. It's a good card, that one, for Matchroom and DAZN. On the undercard, you've got Terry Harper against Hannah Rankin. You've also got Kid Galahad against Maxie Hughes. That's three brilliant fights. That's the only reason I can think that Frank Warren has gone out to get this WBO interim title attached to Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker is it markets it better. It makes it sound like a world title fight to people that don't know better. People should know better. It's not a world title fight. It's nothing to do with a world title fight. As fans, we should reject it. I'm not in favour. I'm not in favour. Talking of world or heavyweights, though, Anthony Joshua, we're now 1 week on from his fallout. Some people will say his breakdown. Eddie Hearn's been on the offensive of late. He did an IFL interview today. He's out there kind of querying if Anthony Joshua even had to apologise for his actions. You know, people want to see the raw Anthony Joshua. I think if Anthony Joshua feels justified in apologising for his actions, then that's fine. It doesn't need Eddie Hearn to come out and query if he has to do it or not. If Joshua feels he has to, then he has to. I'm not comfortable with the fact that his mouthpiece is out there, they're querying it. But look, Joshua, they're talking about him being out in the ring in December. I think Hearn has ruled out Dillian White as an opponent, but says it will be someone in the top 15. Would anyone be too surprised if it was away from the UK? Zhilei Zhang would be an obvious choice out in China. Hearn's mentioned this reference of a world tour. Started almost belittling the value of world titles, which the WBO are doing on their own accord anyway, by sanctioning their interim one for Joyce versus Parker. But, you know, he's saying life is easier now for Anthony Joshua. Life is simpler. He can make the fights that he wants, doesn't have to pay the sanctioning fees, doesn't have to time it around when mandatories will be due. It's a very Matchroom Hearn spin around the fact that Anthony Joshua doesn't hold any world titles. You suddenly make those world titles sound less valuable, and it makes the damage to Joshua from that loss, you know, less significant. Moving on, and speaking of Matchroom, they've announced this week their Champion Series over in the UAE. So it's going to be kicked off with Dimitri Bivol versus Zurdo Ramirez. On the undercard, you're going to have Cordina, Joe Cordina defending his world title for the first time against Rakhimov. You're also going to have Chantel Cameron taking on Jessica Mcaskill for the undisputed title. Brilliant card on paper. There's nothing to pick out about it that doesn't look good. Yeah, I'm all in favour. You have to query this Middle Eastern boxing. Why? Why is it happening? Some will say sports washing. That's one answer, of course. I would have question marks over the the movement of boxing over to that area of the world, given some of the recent headlines, it doesn't all sit quite comfortably to me. And we're going to come on to a little bit of that later on as well. But look, we're seeing a card that's got 3 tremendous fights. It's going to happen at local time, 1 a.m. in the morning. So what's in it for them? What's in it for them as people? You know, there's nothing locally that's going to be boosted about this. There's a sports washing element, of course. You know, it brings attention to the area. Does boxing really move the needle over there? Does it really? Does Bivol versus Ramirez? Does Cordina versus Rakhimov? Does Cameron versus Mcaskill? Does it bring huge headlines? Does it bring talking points? Does it bring that sports washing element? Not for me. None of those names do. Not one. Over in the UK, Eubank Jr was seen over the weekend out at the KSI fight at the O2 and on IFL interviews, tucking in some KFC. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's the whole narrative around the fight is whether Eubank can make the weight. He's not made the weight, 156 pounds, since I think he said he was 18 years old. I love the fact that he's almost out there trolling. He kind of said himself that his whole camp will just be about making weight. And then he's out there doing that. I can't see past Chris Eubank winning this fight. I just don't see how it happens. But Conor Benn looking in tremendous shape. I think what we're all waiting for now is for Chris Eubank Sr., Nigel Benn to get involved, start piping up. Eubank Sr., it's been said, is going to be in the corner for Junior on fight night. How? I mean, I don't know if he's got a license or not. He's done it before when he's turned up in his suit, shirt and tie and run the corner. I've never seen others in corners wearing that kind of attire. I'm not entirely sure it meets the rule book, but good on him. That's what we all want to see, isn't it? Really throw the rule book out the window for one night. Let it happen. Sky Sports, just around the corner. Clarissa Shields taking on Savannah Marshall. Yeah, it's been billed as the biggest women's fight of all time since the last one. I love it. I love it. I think, for me, Savannah Marshall is a total package of a fighter. You can see that Peter Fury aspect about her, that long jab, low lead hand, you know, the power that sits behind it. I think she causes Shields all kinds of problems. Shields, of course, has been there, seen it, done it many times over as an amateur, as a professional. It'd almost be remiss of people to look past Clarissa Shields for this fight, but I fancy Savannah Marshall to win it. I really do. I think certainly with that home country advantage as well, I can see her coming out on top just around the corner. It's an all-women's card on Sky Sports. Phenomenal. Phenomenal by Boxer, being able to put together that all-women's card on primetime Saturday night TV for boxing. It shows how far the women's sport has moved forward. I think they should all be proud. Everybody involved should be proud. Shields and Marshall should be proud. They're able to headline that. They're able to spearhead it. I think it's phenomenal. Speaking of women's boxing, Unified Promotions, October the 7th up in Sheffield. Predominantly women's card. You're going to see the likes of Paige Goodyear, Christina O'Hara McCafferty, Lauren Parker. They're all familiar names to those that have followed the Unified Promotions product since day one. Fantastic platform that it's going to be on. Get yourself up to Sheffield, the Magna Centre in Sheffield, October the 7th. Brilliant, brilliant. And I mentioned earlier about the KSI fight. I have to confess, I didn't watch the fight. The fights, he took 2 on in one night. One, allegedly a professional. What can you say about it? For me, it's not for me. It's not for the purest of boxing fans. But look, there's a marketplace for it. I've got a 13-year-old son. My 13-year-old son was all over it. He was watching it. He was messaging his mates about it. He's a big fan of it. There was huge traffic on the timeline. You know, you look through Instagram, you look through Twitter, you look through Facebook. People were talking about it. That's what they want. Whether it's good or bad, people are talking about it. It raises attention. It gets eyeballs onto the product. People are talking about it. That's what KSI does. He's a marketing machine. Again, it's not for me. 2 wins in a night, calling it professional, fine. I am a little bit uncomfortable with it, though. I think we're only a few months removed from some pretty terrible headlines around the sport of boxing. sanctions being placed, international sanctions. If you look at some of the names that are involved in the show, if you look at some of the people involved in the show, I think if you look at some of the people that are talking about this show, telling us how great the show is, some of the people brokering things around the show, I think when we go back a few months and the breakdown of certain managerial bodies within the sport and, you know, some of the stories that went around it. I'm not making any accusations here about anyone, anybody, any organization. I'm just saying it doesn't feel comfortable to me that a lot of the names that were linked to the bad stories within boxing, you're seeing very prominent within the KSI show. I know somebody involved in professional boxing, board licensed, who was asked not to get involved in it because it's not professional boxing. And then you see the other people that are involved in it. To me, question marks, red flags. But, you know, just my opinion. I'll always give my opinion about these things. I'm not making any accusations. There you go. Look, fans fight back. Pitch boxing app. Thank you for your time. It's been a very whistle-stop tour of the whole boxing world. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll speak soon.